Hello, and welcome to Romance Isn't Dead, episode 39, where Cupid's arrows occasionally get hijacked. Ray, how are we doing?
Still as insane as I was at the end of last time's episode. Mostly because they're being recorded on the same day.
Well, we do what we do. Do
Yeah.
what we do. But we
Go nuts.
y'all. By the way, I'm Sally. We are in the midst of the coronavirus here in the States and in the UK, and I think Ray is a little more tied down than I am. But I'll be honest with you, my state. The governor said, you need to stay home or go to work and try not to do anything else. But I was on the road yesterday to get some essential things, and traffic looked like normal traffic to me. So I don't think anybody's paying attention. So,
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I was talking with my mum yesterday. I thought it seemed so, there was something really familiar about how quiet it was.
mm-hmm.
And it took me until yesterday afternoon because we're actually in the middle of for the first time in years, we're actually having a really good Easter weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We get a 4-day weekend at Easter. I don't think.
Well, I'm a teacher,
Yeah.
so I get spring break next week.
Yeah.
Thank God.
We have a 4-day weekend over Easter. We have the Friday and the Monday off. And for the first time in a long time, we're actually having really good weather.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And the problem with it is they're terrified that it's going to mean that people go out. I'm lucky in that I'm immunocompromised, so I'm not supposed to do very much. So I have actually been indoors, apart from to go and get an injection for my wonderful condition week before last. On the 30th, I haven't actually been outside the house in 5 weeks.
Wow.
So by the time this airs, it will be 7 weeks.
Wow.
And I'm on my own, so you can imagine.
Very frustrating.
It is incredibly frustrating, but then I think about it in respect of my mum has got no immune system at all because she's just finished having chemo. And I'm doing this for, granted, my own health in many ways, but also for people like her. Mm-hmm. So if you are listening to this and you are thinking, oh, yay, I can go out, please don't unless you really have to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I mean,
but as I was saying, the sounds and everything around here are very reminiscent of my childhood. Very reminiscent. We grew up in the 70s and 80s. There were a lot more houses that had no cars than had one. And there were the number of houses that had 2 cars, you could count on one hand.
Wow. That's crazy to me. I grew up in the country.
My road's normally absolutely... I mean, I've got my windows open, and normally when we're recording, I have to close them because the number of cars that go by is so many. Mm-hmm. Not one car has gone by in the last 2 hours.
So people, at least there, are paying attention to stay-at-home orders.
Yes, which is lovely. Well, the lack of noise is lovely, should I say.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. People paying attention to orders. We don't do that in South Carolina.
Yeah, well, I think it's because they're now going to start, I think they started talking about fining people who really do go out their first car of the day, that actually go full out and ignore the rules and regulations are going to start getting fined.
Uh-huh.
So, well, if that's the only way they can get people to follow the rules, then that's the only way they can get people to follow the rules.
Well, I mean, it is what it is, right? That happens, so...
Yeah, and now they're saying they don't think that our way of life is going to return to normal until at least the end of the year. And we're only in freaking April.
I have not heard that at all from my government, but my government is a different animal than yours.
Yeah, our PM has literally just got out of ICU. So he's been apparently quite ill with the virus. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think our take on it may well be different anyway.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine so. And we have not really had powerful people. That's not true. We've had a couple senators, But
Yeah, but didn't one of them go out and spread it after he knew he had it?
yes.
That hit the news over here.
Well, he found out, or he was having a test done, but did not quarantine himself while waiting on the results, and went ahead and went to senatorial things, so on and so forth, and therefore exposed other senators to the virus, some of whom have immunocompromised spouses, children, things like that. He did not win a bunch of friends.
No, I don't imagine he did. I imagine he's
But
also going to lose a lot of votes.
I don't know. I think he's from Kentucky, so who knows?
Oh.
And he's not up for re-election this year, I don't think. I think Mitch is. So we'll see. Anyway, let's move along. Today,
Yes.
Cupid's Arrows. Last time, if you tuned in, we talked about Clueless. The next year, they came out with a period adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma. So this is Emma from 1996. And they've come out with a version of Emma for 2020, which Ray's not super interested in, but I may actually tune into. This specific one starred Gwyneth Paltrow, and I will be honest with everyone. I love period pieces.
So do I.
I love them.
My favourites are Merchant Ivory, so Room with a View, which I think at some point we need to do. That adaptation of A Room with a View and the book.
Much.
I did my second year dissertation for my degree on A Room with a View. I love
so
that book
much.
with an absolute passion, but the
Love
movie.
it so much.
See, now that I think
So
that we're
much.
actually going to agree on this one, we are going to at some point have to cover Room with a View, the book and the movie.
Oh, I loved it so much.
Yeah, so did I. But we're not talking about Room with a View today. We need to remember that. We are talking about Emma. And do you want to know a funny fact about Emma, 1996 version?
What's that?
At the same time as they came out with the movie, the BBC also did an Emma adaptation starring Johnny Lee Miller. And I think it was, why can I never remember her name? She looks like Rachel Weisz. And I'm completely going blank. It's awful. I can't remember her name. She's really, really famous. Very, very famous. And I cannot remember her name. So, Emma. This is bad. I can't remember her name. Always shows the... There we go. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was Romola That was the 2009 version. There was another one before that. But there have been quite a few adaptations of Emma. A lot, actually, of Emma. It's probably one of the most adapted movies there is, I'd say.
Really?
One of the most adapted Jane Austens.
Mm-hmm.
We have several different versions, TV, radio adaptations. There was one not that long ago. There have been 2 movie adaptations in the last 20 years. No, well, 24 years. Yeah, here we go. But there have been a lot. Oh God. I'm now trying to find it. It was 19, was it? It's amazing though, if you think about it. It was Kate Beckinsale. Yes, it was Kate Beckinsale played Emma in the 1996 TV version of it.
Interesting.
With Mark Strong as Mr. Knightley.
I'm going to have to check that out.
I think this is the version that is on Netflix.
For you?
No, I think for you, because I can watch both. I can watch you on Netflix, and Canadian Netflix, and Australian Netflix, and French and German Netflix.
She is so
Smug.
smug about some things. I mean, okay, so
Not much, come on. But
let's move along here.
wait, we were talking about Emma before
Well,
we got waylaid by the wonder that is Room with a View, which is one of my all-time favorite adaptations of
yes.
that era. I absolutely love that film. The scenery is stunning, the characterization is stunning. I know, sorry, I'm getting distracted. We were talking about Emma.
Okay, Emma, y'all.
Not Room with a View.
I love Emma.
We
I
have to
texted I
have to
texted Ray immediately after watching it and saying I loved Emma.
Emma.
And I think that Emma as a character, Emma Woodhouse, is
She's imperfect perfection.
she
That's what she is.
is she is she's well-meaning, but she's the definition of some sort of privilege, right? She's the highest
Well,
of the high.
that's what she constantly says. In fact, when she's talking with Harriet, who is her tie from
Mm-hmm.
Clueless of your
Yeah.
last episode, when she's talking with her and they say, "Oh, well, why aren't you married?" And she says, "Oh, well, a woman in my position doesn't have to get married to hold respect."
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And in some in some ways it kind of reminds me the thing about how do I want to put this? She needs to be reminded sometimes that she doesn't know everything and that she's not. She makes mistakes. She's
That's
human.
what
She makes
Knightley's
mistakes.
there for.
And Knightley is the one who reminds her, which I think would bother people who are super feminist. That they're like that Knightley maybe would remind her, but you know what? That's okay for me, and I too don't have a problem with Knightley reminding her because, again, this was written originally in the 1800s.
1850.
Yeah, like the early 1800s. So I just don't have a problem with it. But this also reminds me again of the timelessness of this narrative, of this coming of age story for a young woman.
Emma's 21.
And so it is a coming of age story for her, right? I mean, and to be fair, in 1815, 21 would be considered
An old maid.
definitely time to be getting married. Chop chop. You're not going to be able to get married if you don't get married soon.
Well,
And so,
her sister's married, and her sister's married to Knightley's brother John, and they have a child together.
right.
And I mean, this is a very circular film
Yes.
because it
Yes.
starts with a wedding
It ends. Yes.
that Emma takes responsibility for.
Right.
She's like, "Oh, look, my matchmaking was successful because until I introduced him, he had no intention of marrying."
Right. Right.
But because of this misleading, I think slightly misleading belief in her own abilities to matchmake, she decides to, in the same way as Cher does, take somebody else under her wing
Mm-hmm.
and offer her somewhat impaired advice.
Yeah, definitely. And she does not. Yeah, she doesn't understand like the Harriet's Harriet's first beau, Mr. Martin, the farmer.
Yeah, the thing is, what Emma forgets is that she is judging everybody on her own scale and not thinking about the social mores of certain aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Because remembering, I mean, Harriet is probably, and this is not a term that I use lightly, and it's horrible, but it's the only way to describe it. She's a bastard.
Yeah, she's a bibelo, right?
Yeah. So nobody's claimed her as theirs. They're not going to take her, give her a debut or anything else.
Right. Right.
And she doesn't have any money behind her. And that, I think, is what Emma is forgetting.
Or she wants to make such a grand match for a friend that she doesn't.
She's forgetting the social mores.
Right. And she's also not appreciating what Harriet wants.
Oh
Right.
God, no.
And And Emma has such a strong personality that she just sort of overrides what Harriet, for her place, doesn't have a strong enough personality to stand up to Emma and say, "No, Emma, this is what I want. I love this man. I like this man." And she needs to be stronger too.
Yeah, I think that there's also an element of she feels so honored that someone of Emma's position is paying that kind of attention to her, that she is misguidedly believing Emma, because of her social position, knows what she's talking about, and she really doesn't.
Right. And then by the end of the movie, Harriet's like, "Oh, I love Mr. Knightley," and it's just like, oh, secondhand embarrassment, because Knightley is a gentleman. But Knightley is not interested in Harriet, and in fact has really scolded Emma earlier in the film for telling Harriet to turn down Mr. Martin, because he's like, no, this is an excellent match for her. Be realistic. But
that's the thing. I don't think Emma understands that reality has to play some sort of part in it. Marriage was never really about love. And this is something that Austen really introduced into the societal commentary with Pride and Prejudice, and with a lot of her others, in that she introduced love as an element to the story.
Right.
Because they're marrying for position, they're marrying for money.
Yeah,
exactly. And
to consolidate power.
Precisely.
Lady Jane Grey. Anyway, sorry. Another
Lady Jane Grey. Oh, I love that film.
Yeah, I know, right? Another Helena Bonham Carter film. Okay, moving on.
Cary Elwes. He was lovely in that film.
Yes, but we digress. Emma.
We can't help it. See, we're talking about movies from the 80s and early 80s and early 90s here, and that is our era.
Yeah, that's true. But it's fun. It's totally fun. So, Did you like it?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, for me, this was my stage of Jeremy Northam.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he was the assassin in the net, I still wanted him really badly.
No judgment.
But he was the perfect Mr. Knightley.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen a fair few of them. I've seen a lot of the adaptations, and he is my favourite Mr. Knightley by far.
Mm-hmm.
There is something broody about him, but at the same time, you can see an element of humour in his expression when he's listening to Emma talking out of her rear end.
Mm-hmm.
But he also takes her to task when she does something wrong, like that. I felt so awful, and I felt so uncomfortable for everybody there.
So much secondhand embarrassment
when she was talking to Miss Bates at the picnic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she insulted her. I mean, she had sort of mentioned to other people, she was quite indiscreet in her criticisms of the Bates, especially the younger Miss Bates, but only with Harriet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then with Harriet, very, very soon after they met, she was quite upfront in offering her opinions. However, when the game was suggested by Frank Churchill at this picnic that they were all attending, she was brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed so out of character for her that I felt a lot of secondhand embarrassment. And Knightley was right to call her out on that occasion. He wouldn't have been any kind of friend to her had he not mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the turning point for not only their relationship, but also her realization that she cared for him.
Right. And he's able to make her see things that maybe she couldn't otherwise.
I think he makes her aware of her faults. And that's not a bad thing when you are under the impression that when everybody is telling you you are perfect. I mean, she's got Elton again plays into Clueless because he is, oh God, Alan Cumming was so
Yeah.
convincing as the creepy little.
He does a really good job with those creepy roles like that, the creepy suitor roles. He does such a good job with those things.
Do you know, the funny thing was the first time I ever saw Alan Cumming, he was playing opposite his wife of the time
Mm-hmm.
in Hamlet on
Mm.
stage at a local theatre.
Oh, wow. Um,
That is my favourite play of all time, just so you know.
he played the creepy bookkeeper in Circle of Friends, also a movie I loved.
Love the book.
I like the book
Made
too.
Vinci.
I like the book too. So anyway, but he played the creepy bookkeeper, right?
Yeah.
So
It's quite interesting how she portrays all men of the clergy that way, though.
mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah,
look at,
yeah,
yeah,
I see what
because
you
look
mean.
at how she portrays him in Pride and Prejudice.
I'd have to go back and look at it again. Sorry.
It's her
Um,
cousin
it makes you. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
who ends
Sorry.
up married to Charlotte.
Yes, that's right. You know what? It makes you wonder if that's what she saw. You know what I mean?
Well, you remember, I mean, she never married Jane Austen.
Right.
They say that she had a very, very tragic love affair, but she was a woman in a man's world,
Mm-hmm.
and she was making a commentary on her perception of society
Mm-hmm.
as a woman.
Which was unusual, to say the
Very
least.
unusual. Well, it was very unusual, but then, of course, it was at the similar time to the Brontes,
Right.
who, and George Eliot for that matter, but George Eliot obviously wrote under a man's name.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's important. I think it's interesting. But I do maintain that this whole notion of Jane Austen's stories and a lot of these classic romances, even Shakespearean stuff, there is a certain timelessness to them that, you know, we can watch these movies, we can read these books in the 21st century and still enjoy them and still find things to relate to. And as I was saying to you last week, my oldest daughter really, really loved Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 version, which is not Ray's favorite, but she really enjoyed that version of Pride and Prejudice, and it was this romance that she really enjoyed. So to me, I think there's a lot of value in that in and of itself. And that's
Austen can create romantic heroes.
she
I
can.
think that's what it is. Austen can create
But
the
she
romantic hero, and he jumps off. The thing is, even in the book, he jumps off the page, and I mean, that's why Mr. Darcy has such a cult following in many ways, is because he is this classic hero.
Okay, but let me say this too. I think she also knows how to create a romantic heroine who is flawed and relatable, but still
Mm.
likable for people who are reading. Does that make
I think,
sense?
yeah, I think with Pride and Prejudice especially, it has a lot to do with the fact that they surround her with so-called perfection.
Mm-hmm. But perfection is the public face, the public
Yeah.
societal face. And so with Emma, for instance, we get to go behind that public perfect face and realize she's not so perfect after all. And, you know, that I think makes her relatable and likable. Does that make
Mm,
sense?
total
So,
sense.
so anyway. Well, is there anything else you wanted to say about the movie Emma, aside from the fact that maybe you should watch it if you have
Yeah,
not had the opportunity?
I do think you should watch it. We will gloss over the fact that it was a Miramax production, therefore Harvey Weinstein's name is in the credits.
Mm,
Ignore that. He had very little to do with the film. It was written. What we did find quite interesting was the
mm,
fact that the entire thing was written and produced and directed by men. the entire thing.
Very weird to me. Very,
Yeah,
very weird to
me too.
Unlike Clueless, which had, it was female helmed. So that was interesting. Very interesting. And I would like to see, and that's, Ray isn't keen on the casting for the new 2020 Emma, but I think I'm going to watch that too at some point soon. So, anyway.
Well, it's available in loads of places because, of course, it had its release very, very shortly before everything happened. And like a lot of films, it has now had an online release.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
It was in the cinema for a while.
Yeah, for 15, 20 minutes. And then,
and
then the world changed.
And everything happened and all the cinemas shut down.
Right. They've pushed Black Widow back to November and all that
Oh,
jazz.
I know, but it's better they push it back to November than it doesn't get shown at all, or it goes straight to
Agreed.
DVD and doesn't make enough money. Therefore, they justify the fact that it was a female-led movie.
Yeah, which has nothing to do with it. All right. Okay, so where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter at allaboutray. I was going to say .com, but it's not. It's just at allaboutray.
Okay.
I post random stuff about my cat and coffee, and I can't remember what day of the week it is, which is mostly at the moment. I woke up this morning and it's like, oh, it must be Sunday today because I was off yesterday, and then I remembered that we had Friday off, so it totally threw me. And they can also find me at allaboutray.wordpress.com. I will be slightly more active there now because I've got time to write. And of course, they can find us at ISN Romance on Twitter.
Perfect. If you are looking to talk to me, I'm Palmetto Blue on Twitter and Instagram. And how would you like to sign out this lovely day?
I would like to sign out with keep on searching for your happily ever after.
And I would remind you that romance isn't dead. It's alive and well on your bookshelf and maybe even on your television screen. Bye.
Bye.